Larry, I think a lot of Crowdsource the Truth viewers are feeling really an increasing sense of urgency that's upon us right now. And I know you're feeling that as well. How are you today, Larry?
Just under a lot of pressure. Um, a lot of whatever they call it, deductibles crap that I've got to pay, and I can't pay it, and they're holding up some of the care because of it. But anyway, it is what it is.
Well,
But the
you know,
urgency that we're
but
going to
wait,
talk
Larry,
about
before we
today
go on, hang on, let me just address this because each week we've got literally thousands of people watching the show. Everybody wants to hear your insights, your analysis, and all of that. I want to urge those viewers who've been watching us each week to visit nicholslive.com and go to the donate tab. Larry's been in the hospital for months and he's got a lot of medical bills. I hope that people watching will visit his website, click on donate, and help support Larry financially. We can't do these shows without Larry, and if you enjoy listening to him, this is really something you should do. Even if it's only $5, $10, $20, if the people watching now would go on to nicholslive.com and using Larry's PayPal address, you can go to paypal.com and you can pay Larry through nicholslive@aol.com. Send him any amount of your choice. You can also mail money to Larry. Please put some cash in an envelope and send it to him there. You can also get in touch with Mary Ellen if any of these methods aren't suitable. But we really want to help Larry. He's been on the show for so long. And Larry, there's so many people who listen to you each week. I know we're going to be able to help you get over this target. You really need, there's an amount you need right now for the hospital to allow you to have this home care thing, right? We're looking for $600.
right? It's got to be today. It's got to be quick.
All right, well, people are going to step up and help you with that, Larry. I know a lot of people tuned in because they want to hear your thoughts with regard to the latest news. You know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. They tell us last Friday. We haven't seen her in a long time, but she's no longer on the Supreme Court. She's going to be replaced. What do you make of all this, Larry?
Well, there's a big secret that's around Washington that unfortunately your listeners or any of the other listeners around the world do not hear about. And if I may, let me explain. Folks, the Democrats have already brought on some 1,200 attorneys to evaluate and, deal with this post-election crap. They know that the blanket mailing out of the mail-in ballots that they just sent blanket to gazillions of people, they know that that's not going to work. But all they're trying to do is jam it up. What Trump has got to do now, folks, hear me, please, 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 please hear me. What Trump has to do, and he knows it, he has to pick his replacement for Ginsburg. And that replacement has got to be confirmed before the election on November the 3rd. That person has got to be confirmed prior to the election, November the 3rd. Now, why? Why the rush? Well, guys, think of this. With all of the stuff that's going to go down relative to this election, all of the games that are being played, all the tricks that are going to be played or are being played and going to get worse. The problem is it will have to go eventually, and they know it, to the Supreme Court for adjudication. One side or the other, Jason, is going to contest the outcome of the election.
Right.
One side or the other. And then when they contest it, it will have to be fast-tracked over to the Supreme Court for a final resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if Trump does not get his nominee confirmed before the election, which is what the Democrats are doing everything in their power to stop. What will happen is it will go to a split court, 4-4.
Yeah.
And a 4-4 split court means that it doesn't get resolved. It doesn't. There's no way it will get resolved in the 90 to 120 days that it's got to be resolved before they nullify the election in total.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you understand what I just said?
Yeah. What happens when they nullify the election, Larry? Who would be president?
Well, if they nullify the election, they just have to do it again.
That's crazy.
Well, it is crazy, but it is what it is. And so the only option for Trump and for the Republican senators is to force the nominee to get confirmed prior to the election. So therefore, you're back to a 5-4 court. And there he stands a chance of pulling it out. Mm-hmm. Look, we know right now that they are planning to bogey up a ton of votes. A ton. Now, when I say bogey up a ton of votes, it's a myriad of different ways, all connected to election fraud.
Right.
Number one, they send out these blank ballots. They have no idea who got them. They have no way of verifying who's returning them and whether or not the people returning them are actually the people that should return them. They've got that going on. Then they're going to have in all of the different precincts too many to count, too many to get involved with. They've got the problem of election fraud. Now remember, guys, there's a difference between voter fraud and election fraud. We've talked about it here. Nobody else does, but we have. Voter fraud, to get a clarification once again, voter fraud, Jason, is where, like you and I would go in and we would vote, being Larry and Jason. Then we turn around, we come back and we vote again, being Jason and Larry. And then we go back and we vote again. You know, it's where one person votes multiple times, right, or a variation of all of that. Now, election fraud is when you have something that is systematic, where it's system-wide. That's where, as an example, you would see rigging the election machines to where when people think they're voting for Trump, they're actually, when they think they're voting for Trump, they're actually casting a vote for Biden. Uh-huh. And that's done by twiddling with the equipment and making sure that any votes going to Trump actually go to Biden. So there's the difference between election fraud and voter fraud. Now,
but Larry, aren't there more complicated ways they could be doing this election fraud? Like, I mean, what about this whole? How did they just introduce the post office into the whole mix? That kind of came out of nowhere.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, election fraud is. I just gave a simple example, but election fraud can be done in a myriad of ways. And just like you said, just out of the blue, they're turning over some 1.6 or 1.8 million votes to the post office.
Did you also notice, Larry, that the news this past week has been just absolutely rabid that coronavirus is increasing? Because now that it's about to be October, I guess they want everybody, when it becomes November, to be convinced again that it's super dangerous to be outside and you better mail in your vote.
Right. And as incredible as it may seem, thanks to a coordinated effort between the Biden Democratic Party campaign and the media, they are literally turning thousands and thousands of heads to where they're blaming, if you can believe this, Trump for the damn virus. You saw
and
that
the riots.
last week. Yeah, I mean, everything is being dumped on Trump. When you know, and I know, Donald Trump had nothing to do with the virus. He couldn't have anything to do with the virus. And then Biden comes out and says, well, yeah, but he didn't start doing the things that he's doing now soon enough. Well,
right.
If you go back and look, folks, Trump's actually 30 days or better ahead of Biden on when they started with the virus and blaming Trump. It's not his fault. He couldn't have done any better. Then you turn around and I catch a little bit of hell over this every once in a while. But let me tell you something, folks. You have no idea the number of people that all they get is the 6 and 10 o'clock evening news. That's all they get. That's what they consider sufficient enough information to make a decision as to who they choose to be president or not. So if they can, if nothing else, get a goodly number of people to at least be, Jason, confused, okay, maybe in their deepest and hardest thought process, they obviously know President Trump didn't start the virus. They know that. But you just don't have any idea how heavy the media just banging them and banging them and banging them. It wears on people. It truly does.
Right,
and
because
so
people
now
don't really
you've
know.
got that. That's right. So now you've got that problem. Now, I just checked in this morning with the internals that are showing up with Trump and Biden, the internal polls. These are the ones that the campaigns use to actually tell them where they are in reality versus, whatever. So they're sitting there with a goodly number of people that are now going to be confused over, well, maybe where there's smoke, there's fire. So maybe with Biden, we understand him complaining about Trump and the virus, but that doesn't explain the mainstream media. If the mainstream media is attacking Biden and blaming him, then there must be something to it. Then that gets us back to the analytics of the campaign, which this time is different than any time before. Normally, as we've discussed here, folks, normally the formula for an election, especially a presidential election, is 40-40-20. In the case of Trump, 40% love him, 40% hate him. But it's that 20% that we categorize undecided, that, that group does not exist in this election, Jason. It doesn't. You see, normally it's 40-40-20, right? Well, this election, you don't have that. This election, you've got what's called 50-50. There's very few people that are going to walk out, go in and vote in this election that have not already made their mind that they either love or they hate Trump.
Right.
So
I agree.
What the Democrats are doing, and this is what may be confusing to some of the audience, what the Democrats are doing is they're saying, look, it don't matter who we're running against Trump. It could be Howdy Doody. We don't care if Biden looks like an idiot. We don't care if he looks like a fool. We don't care because we're calling on our people to come out in force and vote Trump out. Don't worry about who gets it. You got to remember to vote Trump out.
Wow.
Now,
you know, it just occurred to me, Larry. Joe Biden is actually much older than Howdy Doody, so he might be a better candidate.
Yeah. Well, he might, and I will say this, a couple of things relative to that. You'll notice last week there were a couple of gaffes, as people call them, where Harris said a Harris-Biden administration.
Right.
Well, that sounds like just a mistake, right? But then it wasn't until just later in that afternoon that Joe Biden made, quote unquote, the same gaffe. He said a Harris-Biden administration. He did. He said it. Well, now that confuses a lot of people. Are we voting for her or are we voting for Biden? But you see, it don't matter. It don't matter, because what's going on is they're getting their people out to vote Trump out. That's what puts the pressure on you and me and your audience, Jason. We have got to convince your audience, our audience, we've got to convince all of the people that love Donald Trump to understand they've got to come out this election and vote to reelect Donald Trump. Got to. And that's going to be.
I agree.
That's a bit of a twist. Now, I did talk to a neurosurgeon this morning. I saw a picture. It was just a still photograph last night. And here was Biden. But in this picture, something troubled me greatly. His right eye was similar to what I remember seeing with my grandmother. She had a stroke. And it locked up her muscles, in her face. Guys, I'm telling you, Biden, in the past 4 to 6 weeks, so says the neurosurgeon, 4 to 6 weeks, Biden has had either a series of small strokes or one big one, but he's suffering from a stroke, and that's why his face is doing what it's doing. That's also why when he tries to talk, it's like he gets confused. He's not confused. The man doesn't have all his oars in the water.
Well, Larry, it was almost exactly 1 year ago when Joe Biden appeared at a climate town hall on CNN, where his left eye, visibly filled with blood, which seems like a very dangerous situation, and certainly supports what you're saying about the possibility of a stroke or multiple strokes or other neurological problems. It's really bad. I mean, you've had your fair share of health emergencies and stuff, and health is very fragile. It's a strenuous job being the president of the United States. I don't know how they think an aging, infirmed man such as Joe Biden is going to be able to do it. I want to redirect you for a second, if I can, Larry, because there's been a lot of talk about some of the people that Donald Trump is going to nominate for the Supreme Court position. This woman, Amy Coney Barrett, she's just a couple months older than me, which is, I guess I'm getting old, but it's a little surprising. What do you think about Amy Coney Barrett?
38? Is she the one that's 38 years old? 48.
48. Yeah. Pretty young, right? Who's the youngest Supreme Court justice ever? This woman?
I guess. I know there's one that they talk about that if she gets it, she could serve for 50 years.
Wow. That's a long time. Joseph Story, here's the deal. To date, 6 justices have been foreign born, and most recently, 7 things you might not know. So 32, Joseph Story was the youngest when he joined the bench in 1811. But I mean, how many people, 32 was kind of older when it was 1811 and the average life expectancy was not what it is today. Anyway, interesting. What do we think about her, Larry?
Well, what Trump has got to do in his figuring, he is meeting this evening, or already has met, I guess, today, with his selection committee. And one of the criteria is to pick the latest confirmed member of either the 7th or the 11th federal appellate court. Because that way they've already been through so much of the blood and guts confirmation process. So it's all done in the interest of hurry. What has he got to do to pick a person? And again, it's kind of like Biden, it doesn't matter who the candidate is, you have to vote Trump out. Well, it's kind of the same thing with the Supreme Court justice. It really doesn't matter who they are. It really doesn't. What matters is which person could be the most expeditiously confirmed. And that's going to connect to which one, and this is a good way for you and your audience to kind of figure it on your own, which one of the confirmed or which one of the list meets that criteria better than the rest. And that's who he will end up appointing.
Yep.
So think about that. Now your audience knows who he's going to pick this weekend. Or at least your audience is going to know who he most probably is going to pick, because it has nothing to do with his or her, in this case, her qualifications. It has to do with how recently she just got confirmed to a lesser position. However, it was still a position that required confirmation.
Well, let me ask you about that, Larry, because in November of 2017, this judge was appointed to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, which is interesting. Right. This is Judge Amy. So she's just started there, so we don't really know much, right, or at least I don't know much about her performance there. But, I had spoken with Judge Posner, who was on the Seventh Circuit. Judge Posner is retired now. And he's sort of famous for saying that the Seventh Circuit is basically corrupt. He was sort of fighting corruption, and they sort of threw him out of there. What do we think of that?
Yeah. Well, that's true. And then one of the others, I do not know the name of the lady, but one of the other judges that's on the short list was just approved to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. And the 11th, as you should know, is probably the most corrupt of all, second to maybe, I guess, the Ninth Circuit out of California. But again, all of that matters not. The typical criteria by which the Democrats will attack a nominee, all of that won't matter this time. It's a matter of whether or not the Democrats can stall confirmation past the election.
And will they?
Well, here again, we have Lindsey Graham. You have Mitch McConnell. They are coming out huffing and puffing and going to blow your house down. They're coming out and they're saying all this stuff that they will get it done. Now, let me tell you the problem with such an affirmative position of they will get it done. It's just, this is a totally different election from the election for president. down to and including the appointment and the confirmation of a Supreme Court justice. This is totally different than we've ever seen before. And the dynamics, Jason, the reason I'm going to all this trouble to tell your audience, the dynamics involved in this, to be quite honest, have very little to do with qualifications, etc. It has to do with beating the clock. Beating the clock. And if they can beat the clock with any one of the 4 or 5 that he has on his short list, that's who he's going to go with. Now, Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, they swear to damn that, guess what? We're going to get a confirmation vote and we're going to get them confirmed. Well, that's fine, well and good, except for the fact that you're sitting there with Mitt Romney. You're sitting there with Collins. You're sitting there with Murkowski. And I can't remember the other 2. But, you've got a short list of 4 or 5 Republican senators that hate Trump with a passion. And they're going to do everything they can to screw him over.
Yeah.
Now, remember, regardless of how much Mitt Romney hates Donald Trump, these people are hurting our country. They're hurting us. But they don't care. This is just about personal vendettas. So if you do the math, we've got 4. We have 4 senators on the Republican side that if any one of them hold true to their statements that, they're going to vote against whoever he brings up, if any one of them hold true with what they have said, then it's over. They won't be confirmed.
Politico just put out an article about 3 hours ago saying that Mitt Romney backs a vote on the Supreme Court nominee, clearing the way for Trump. But don't we anticipate that Mitt Romney has something tricky up his sleeve? Like he's saying, okay, let's vote, and then he'll vote against it.
Well, you got to watch these guys, Jason, as you and I have talked for years now.
Yeah.
There's a thing called Washington speak. All right? Washington speak. And that's not the same, folks, as you and I talking. So if you look at Collins, Murkowski, and Romney, if you look at what they've said, they have said that they go along with a vote, a confirmation vote. What they did not say is how they intend to vote.
Right.
They're saying that, yes, they are in favor of getting the vote in and casting the vote, right, before the election. Mm-hmm. But if you notice very closely at what they say, not in a single one of those guys do they state in any way how they plan to vote. There's the fly in the ointment. That's the one that'll kill us. So here we go. We've got a presidential election that people don't care who the person is that's running against Trump. It's just a matter of they've got to get their people out to vote. Yeah. Conversely, Jason, we must, as you and I have talked for a long time now, you better drop everything you're doing. You better forget about the virus. You better forget about the price of eggs in China. You better forget about all of it. One thing must be accomplished November the 3rd. We have got to get our people out, and we've got to get sufficient enough people to come out and vote so that Trump wins hands down in the election.
Yeah.
Now, once we accomplish that, then the other dynamics start to come in play. But we've got to accomplish that first. Now, be careful. All of you, be careful. The Ginsburg death, that scared me to death for 2 reasons. Number one, it takes everybody's focus off the law. The ball should be get out and vote for Trump. Nothing happens one way or the other if Trump don't win the election. It don't mean nothing. If he don't win, it don't mean nothing. Nothing matters if he don't win. We lose our country. The second thing that bothered me, which we had confirmation of yesterday, just because Ginsburg died, did you notice the campaign contribution to Biden? Trump had been sailing along. Well, yeah, Trump had been sailing along with a comfortable lead in campaign finance. They raised $100 million plus just this weekend. And it was all because everybody panicked and Ginsburg died. And so all of these Democrats come out of the woodwork saying, oh my God, we've got to get in and chip in big bucks. So they're chipping in the big bucks. Now, Trump is behind $75 million.
I have a hard time believing that, Larry. Isn't it? We heard a lot about how this company, Thousand Currents, this nonprofit thing, was somehow raising money for Black Lives Matter, and that money through Act Blue was possibly being, what's the word? Stolen, basically sent to the wrong, but diverted. How do we know that that's not happening? It seems like a lot of money for Joe Biden to raise.
Well, you don't. Doesn't matter. He has to report it because of the size. So the money's having to be reported, so it's documented, but it don't mean nothing. Whether you've got a whole bunch of what's called batching going on, pooling.
Right.
Where these gatherers go out and they get 100 people and they get each one of the 100 people to chip in so much, and then they turn around and make a single contribution to Biden's campaign. And we don't know whether one person gave $1 million or, we just don't know. That's what these pool funds are able to hide.
Right.
But think about it. Just because Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, just because of that, the Democrats panicked. They see an opening. You see, to them, with Trump, it's always been about Supreme Court justice. He has said since the day he ran against Hillary, it's a big deal. Who's going to be president? Who picks, you're going to be able to load up the Supreme Court.
Right.
But the Democrats, they hadn't made that big a deal about it. Well, they are now. They are now, because Ginsburg dying just put an impetus on it now to where they're all involved. So now you got him getting a major cash contribution this weekend, big time. Big time.
Larry, Chicky Rude suggests, that Mitch McConnell could just adjourn the Senate and then Trump could appoint an interim. Is that correct?
No, it's not. He could not. I mean, I guess he could, but it would not work. Number one, before the Supreme Court could make a legitimate vote, it has to be done through the proper channels, through the system. So, no, he can't. He can't appoint like he could an attorney general or some other seat. You can't do that with a Supreme Court justice. You just can't. Guys, this thing's all on the line now.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've said it. I don't know how many times you've said it. But I know both of us together have tried to warn people this is the most important election that this nation has ever seen. Now, that sounds overly stated. Because, when you go back and you think about the Civil War, when you think about all these other critical moments in our history, But folks, this is the election of elections.
Yeah.
This election, as you have seen, well, let's take another look. Remember when you and I were saying that George Soros has changed his strategy, and now he's funding local prosecutors.
Yeah.
Well, we said that, you and I, and we talked about it, you and I. We didn't even, you and I don't think had the system worked out in our head completely, but now it's starting to rear itself. You see, all of these riots in Portland, Oregon, and all these other places, the police go out and arrest these guys for throwing bricks at cops, doing whatever.
They let them
Guess
go.
what? They let them go. Why? Because the prosecutors that Soros funded and got them their job, the prosecutors are loyal to Soros. And so when he tells them to let these people walk, they walk. They're walking.
Yeah, it's incredibly dangerous what's happening right now. I don't know if you saw this announcement, Larry, but yesterday they announced that New York, Portland, and Seattle were being designated as, I'm sure you saw it, designated as anarchist jurisdictions. I made a video yesterday sort of just walking around. I depicted Cuomo and de Blasio and his fellow losers as an anarchist punk band. And then I went around asking some people in my neighborhood if they had heard about this and what they thought about this declaration of anarchy. I think it's going to result in less federal funding for the city. But I mean, amazingly, most people just didn't know. When I was talking about anarchy, they were like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Well, look around at all the smashed businesses and closed places, and they're just like oblivious." It was amazing. Most people wanted Joe Biden to be president, at least in my neighborhood in New York.
Yep, they really do. They really, really do. Now, Jason, I would assume your neighborhood to be certainly middle income plus. So you would think there would be you would think there would be a level of intelligence that would certainly be more than the ghettos. But these people want Biden. Why?
Yeah.
Because they blame Trump. They blame Trump because the restaurants are still shut down. They blame Trump because he had to shut the economy, quote unquote, down. They blame him. And, then you turn around and Trump is trying feverishly, along with Republicans in the House and the Senate, they're trying feverishly to get the Democrats, Pelosi and them, to vote to where at least in the interim, people that are on unemployment and can't go back to work, where they'd at least get $300 a week to supplement what they're losing. Well, the Democrats are blocking that vote, but then they turn around and they're blaming Trump. So now if you're sitting there and you can't make your bills meet, you can't make the money you got coming in meet your bills, and who are you going to blame? The only one you're going to blame is the one the media tells you it's his fault. It's Donald Trump's fault. It's not his fault. They're trying to get it passed. Hell, Trump was trying to get them back to 600, 650. And of course, they wouldn't go for that at all. So he dropped it to 300, 350. And they still are blocking it and will not allow it to be voted on.
Larry,
but
we
guess what?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? The people in your neighborhood, people in semi-educated neighborhoods all across the country, they're buying into it. They're literally buying into it.
This is a very liberal neighborhood. There's a lot of gay people in this neighborhood, and I think that they're definitely on board with the anti-Trump, saying that Trump is anti-gay kind of rhetoric. I don't think that's correct, but they seem to feel that way. Larry, Mark Vaughn is telling us that Ruth Bader Ginsburg died last year, and they're waiting until now to tell us. It's a fair question to examine. There was an article in January talking about how Fox News apologized that there was a graphic saying that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had died in 2019. We also haven't seen her at all in a long time. What do you think about that notion that she's been dead
I
for a
don't
long
believe
time?
that. I don't believe that for one reason, particularly. At the same time all of this was going around that she was actually already dead, she was speaking in Little Rock to a packed auditorium,
Really?
giving her life history.
Oh.
So no, she died when they said she did, or at least she didn't die a year ago or whenever that story came out. But here again, if we don't have enough trouble, now we've got these periphery stories floating around. She really didn't die this weekend. She died a year ago. That's nuts. Now, maybe it's true. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying it's nuts. We can't worry with that right now, Jason. We can't. Nothing matters on planet Earth if Donald Trump does not win this election. Nothing.
Here's an interesting piece for you, Larry. I didn't realize this, but apparently I don't see how this could be possible. They're showing a series of photographs. This must be from months ago, but Felicity Jones was apparently in a movie called On the Basis of Sex, which this says is currently in theaters. So I guess it must be from a while ago. But I don't know who this Felicity Jones is. She's beautiful, and it's just a movie about Ruth Bader Ginsburg called On the Basis of Sex. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. I know nothing
and she's
about
been on
it.
Saturday Night Live. They're really making her into, she's like the most lauded Supreme Court justice ever. And she's not the first female. What about Sandra Day O'Connor?
Nope. Right. Look, when it comes to Ginsburg, that and the word sex don't seem to go together with me.
Yeah, exactly.
She is not very, I don't mean any disrespect, but she was just not very pretty to me. And she certainly
she's an older
had
woman
very
and
little,
a judge. She's not really the type of person you would think of as being kind of, in that context. The other thing, Larry, and this is going to please James Comey, the Lego company made a Lego character out of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I didn't know that.
I didn't know it either. But I will tell you something else. Comey, there's a lot of controversy about Durham and a bit of a rift between he and Barr.
Oh, really?
Durham wanted to go ahead and indict Comey and McCabe.
Yeah.
And a couple of the others. He wanted to go ahead and get the indictment served prior to the election. Barr, in what I thought was a very wise decision, told him no. He did not want the indictments of Comey and the group. He did not want to see those get tied up in all of this political junk, because it would certainly do no service to the cases. As a matter of fact, it would make it almost impossible to get, a true indictment or a true investigation or a true case. Anytime you mix politics with the judiciary, it gets real ugly real fast. Now they're talking about, of course, they want to impeach Barr. Well, once again, we're running out of clock. Yeah. They cannot impeach Barr in time to do any good for the Democrats, I'm speaking. They're even talking about if Trump goes forward and pushes with the confirmation of his Supreme Court justice, they're even talking, Pelosi and them are talking about once again impeaching him. Well, you know yourself, We've been down this road before. That's a 2-3 year process.
How can they impeach him for nominating a Supreme Court justice? It's the role of the president.
Mm-hmm. Jason, you see, here we go. Here we go. It's not possible, but yet they'll do it. It's not possible, but yet they'll try.
Wow.
It's not possible, but the good news is, as far as the impeachment of Trump relative to this, it will serve them no purpose. It cannot. We've been there before. You cannot get an impeachment process against the president, crazy as it is for doing his job. But even at that, you just can't get an impeachment through the system in time to jam up this election. That's not what they're going to do. That's not what the quivers in their arrows, as Pelosi said. That's not one of them. That's not one of the tricks they intend to play. What they intend to do, you now know it, is they intend to rig the election in each and every way possible, either through election fraud or whatever they've got to do, they're going to do it with the sole intent.
After the fact.
Well, with the sole intent, Jason, of clogging up the result of this election. And Trump is playing them like a fiddle in that he knows what they're trying to do. And conversely, that's why he's trying to force confirmation prior to the election. The Democrats want this confirmation held up. They don't want any process to go and take place until after the election so that they've got a 4-4 split, which means this election is dead in the water. Before it ever even gets started, it's dead in the water. And that's what they're trying to do, and Trump's doing a very smart thing, a very wise thing, and he's fighting them the way he can. As long as everybody stays true to their word, if Mitch McConnell, if Lindsey Graham, and see, I don't trust Lindsey. Lindsey's in a tight race for the first time in a bazillion years. He's basically nuts up, dead even with the guy running against him, the Democrat. Lindsey's never had that before. Well, he's got it now. So as long as Graham's job is up for grabs, you can't trust Lindsey Graham. Not a thing he says.
Yeah.
Then let's put another thing to it. They know, the Democrats, what you and I have talked about. It's knowing that we're in a 50-50 model versus the 40-40-20. Knowing we're in a 50-50 model, knowing that the whole goal for the Democrats is to get their people out to vote out Trump. Doesn't matter who's running against him. It matters not. Just vote. Go out and vote to beat him. Now, they know what you and I have talked about, which is in a 50-50 model, it's impossible to believe that people are going to go in and they're going to vote to get rid of Trump, but then turn around and vote for a Republican for the Senate or the House. It's not going to happen. If they go to the trouble to vote Trump out, they're certainly not going to vote to put a Republican in the House or the Senate. Conversely, Trump knows the same thing. Trump knows that if he wins, the likelihood of him winning, somebody coming in and voting for him to win, they're not going to turn around, Jason, and vote to put a Democrat in the House or the Senate.
Yeah.
That's why you see such weirdness in the spending habits in this election versus others. Normally, you would see for the House and the Senate, respectively, Republican or Democrat, normally you would see those guys spending tons of money.
On the campaign, you mean?
Yeah, on their campaigns, but you don't. Why? Because they know what we know. which is all they got to do is make sure Trump wins, and if Trump wins, likely as not, the Republicans are going to be drugged through the election right alongside of Trump.
Now, Larry, let me ask you this. People are still curious to know if you think that there may come a point in time that Joe Biden will be replaced by Michelle Obama.
No.
Why not?
No, he will not. I believe he will be replaced by Kamala Harris.
And then who will be vice president?
I think that's probably, well, she'll pick one.
That's not
I think
good.
that's been in the drawing board since day one. I think since the day she was put on the ticket, the plan was in vogue for Biden to be the pretty face to win, just enough to be able to beat Trump, and then he will withdraw his name. He'll withdraw because of sickness or whatever, and she'll become the president. That's the way it's been since day one.
That's a terrible thought.
See, all this stuff, if all this stuff, if you'll just give it time, which we don't really have, if you just give it time, it'll all play itself out. What they're trying to do, what they are doing, will show itself. It'll rear its head. You just have to sit back and watch. But I assure you, worse than Biden would be a Harris presidency. I mean, she is knee-deep in love with AOC and that group. She is. And whichever wins, Biden or Harris, whichever one of those people win, one thing President Trump is telling the truth about, and he's saying it as loud as he can, we will become a socialist nation. I noticed, maybe it was last night or night before last, whenever he was speaking in Ohio at one of the places there, you know, he said, I think it's time to quit even saying socialism. He said, I think they're so far gone, they're just pure communism. It's just pure communism. And that's where we're headed. This country is about to end, as you and I know it. It is, Jason.
Yeah, I think it kind of already
It's fixing
has.
to end.
We got to get it back.
Now, I was pleased to see the governor of Florida, what's his name?
DeSantis.
A little bit. All right. He and his state legislature pulled a real clever trick. They passed laws that if you throw a brick at a cop, they'll prosecute you. If you block a road, they will prosecute you. And it's just one thing after another. They're going after the people that are causing these riots, and they're going to prosecute them. And that's all it ever would take. That's all it's ever going to take. Somebody literally prosecuting these people, putting them in jail, and you know what? It'll end overnight. The people that are behind Soros, the people that are doing the rioting, the people that are doing the destruction of the property, et cetera, these people, they're doing it because Soros' people are paying them. They don't believe this stuff. I mean, you know, this is not an idealistic gesture. On our
this is
side,
a powerful bill.
our people are,
Larry, this is powerful legislation because Section E here talks about RICO liability attaches to anyone who organizes or funds a violent or disorderly assembly. So that means just being there, if violence breaks out, you could be charged as a member of a racketeering, influenced, corrupt organization. So everybody involved, this concept of mostly peaceful protests, that doesn't fly because that's sort of like, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer was mostly peaceful. He spent a lot of time sleeping and kind of, you know, doing other stuff. But it's during those isolated moments that he was a mass murderer that were a problem.
Right. Oh, look, Jason, I'm telling you, They've got it on the ball in Florida, but now that's one of the few states that you could pull something like this. Some of the other states, that won't happen. But remember, Trump is blindsided. He cannot go into Portland, Oregon. He can't go into San Francisco. He cannot, thanks to posse comitatus and the fact that before he can actually go in with federal troops, he must be invited. And of course, they're not going to invite him.
That's like vampire rules.
This is it. Yeah, I mean, this is just literally over the top. I don't know if I've done a halfway decent job today explaining to the audience how serious and how imminent all of this is. But folks, it's quite serious. It's beyond quite serious. And it's absolutely imminent. This is it. This is it for us. Yeah. So I would hope that everybody that hears our voice today, when they go around the water cooler tomorrow or whenever between now and Election Day, I certainly hope that they will go to the trouble to explain to the people in their group that you must go out and vote. People on our side must see whatever we've got to do to be able, for example, to help get the elderly, help them fill out their ballots, get their ballots in. That's what the Democrats are going to be doing. Democrats are working right now every nursing home in America. And all they're doing is an old system we used to use with the Clintons. You go in, you get the administrator of a nursing home, pay them cash under the table. They go around and they help all of the elderly people in the nursing home fill out their ballot. Hell, they don't even know who they're voting for. They don't care.
Cuomo's cleared out these nursing homes, Larry.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it amazing? You had Cuomo and you had the governor of California, both of them, coming out week before last, speaking truthfully about what Trump had done for their states. But you notice that didn't get carried much. Didn't get carried at all in most cases.
I mean,
I wish somebody would send in a message to you and tell whether or not, Jason, we've done a half-assed job of explaining where we are, because I know I've hit them with a lot of stuff. It's a lot. It's a lot to have to contemplate. It's a lot to have to, it's just a lot you have to know. But it all boils down to one thing, folks. Please get out and vote to reelect Donald Trump. Once that's done, once you, each and every one of you that hear my voice, once you have done that, you have done a major part of your job, which is to get him reelected. Jason, I've spent the last days of my life trying to make do for all the things I did wrong for the Clintons and everybody else. And I don't know how much longer I've got. I hope I make it through November the 3rd. But it's getting nip and tuck, as you know. But folks, this is it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is it, guys. Now, if somebody out there would send you a message and tell you whether or not, I've stumbled across stuff so fast that maybe people didn't get it.
No, we're getting a positive response, Larry. People feel like you're explaining this well. You're raising points that certainly I hadn't thought of necessarily. And, I think you're doing a very good job. I want to remind people, Larry, to visit your website. People can go to nicholslive.com and they can get all the information that they need. Your PayPal address is nicholslive@aol.com, and using that, people can go to PayPal, send you money to help you cover these medical bills. We've got over 600 people watching, and with all the channels combined, if people sent even only $5 each, that would really help Larry cover the medical bills. He was in a coma for months. He's struggling now. Larry, I can't believe how you're able to recover from day to day. We've had multiple phone calls now where I've been really concerned about your ability to snap back. You're absolutely amazing. I hope you can overcome this thing and have many more years of life and see the second term of our 45th president, because I certainly don't want the country to be destroyed, and I certainly don't want Ocasio-Cortez in charge of anything.
Yeah, well, she has made her place. You know, Jason, in all my years in politics, I have never have I seen a lowly member of Congress, of the House of Representatives, a low member, freshman, literally dictating to, like Chuck Schumer in the Senate, what they want and what they expect them to do.
How do you think she's able to do that? Just celebrity, the social media celebrity status that she's been able to garner?
I think it's that. And I think a lot of it is just, this is such a tense time where even the old guard senators are scared to death of her. They're not scared of her, but they're scared of this army that they believe, she's at least convinced them to believe, that they're just scared to death that she's the real deal, that there's this huge amount of progressives out there that if they cross her, that they'll turn and the Democrats will lose everything.
Yeah.
Look, the Democrats are scared, Jason. They're as scared as I wish our people would be scared. They're scared of losing their jobs. That's all they care about. That's all they care about. But, I want our people to have the same level of fear about our country. Look, Chuck Schumer don't give two hoots and a tinker's damn about the people in this country. He doesn't. He doesn't even act like he cares. Or at least he doesn't act very well. But they're scared. And that's our strength. That's our strength right now, folks. If you will convince your congressman or your senator, if you convince them that you cross us and you're going home, and boy, I tell you, if enough of them are convinced of that, you will be amazed at how different tomorrow would look. Now, if they are more convinced tomorrow that AOC will sick her group on them, then that's what they're afraid of.
Yeah. Well, she's managed to garner, an amazing level of celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
She's young and attractive and on Twitter and Instagram and all these other things where people see her. So she's done a lot. I mean, she almost seemed like the counter Trump, right? They recognized after Trump won that his influence there in social media was more powerful than they anticipated that it could be. And I think Ocasio-Cortez is kind of the response to that. But we'll see what happens with her.
But I mean, think about it, Jason. She cracked the code of the social media stuff long before guys like Schumer and them. they're still locked into the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
They're not into how all that social media junk works. Even to this day, they know it does. They're just not sure that they know how. And she obviously, along with Donald Trump, cracked the code. But I'm telling you, there's still some things fixing to come that I guess we ought to mention. Sometime between 2 weeks to a month before the election, November the 3rd, the institutional buyers in the stock market, they're going to crash the market. They're going to pull out from underneath Donald Trump his claim to fame. His claim to fame is what he had done with the market and with business. They're going to pull that out from under him, number one. Number two, they're getting very close to doing this already. They're fixing to shut down any conservative views on the internet.
Yep.
They're going to shut it down. Now, people in your audience are going, no, I can't do that. Oh, yes, they can. Because once again, you end up back where this all started. Who are you going to call? Who are you going to call if you know and I know and we know that they're just going to shut it down, and then people are going to complain. People are going to try to find ways to stop them, but there is no way to stop them. It's a private company. They can do as they wish.
Well, there are ways to stop them, Larry. Part of what you're talking about is there are politically influential business people who own companies and are sitting on the boards of companies that perhaps control some of the big tech companies that some conservative voices, including the one that people are hearing right now, rely on to get the word out. And I haven't gone into too much detail with you about this, but, IAC, the Interactive Corporation that Chelsea Clinton sits on the board of, they own Vimeo. And there's been some stuff going on. Vimeo is the service that I use to drive the sponsor exclusive shows on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And Larry, there's been a disruption to the service, and I've had a little bit of back and forth with them. We've been talking about some stuff. And I think that this is a targeted effort to shut down the money source for Crowdsource the Truth. So I think you're right. They are trying to do what is anything in their power to do these things. We got the lawsuit from the Emmys. We got the lawsuits from other people that I'm not even interested in talking about right now. But Larry, everybody is pleased to hear you sounding well.
But think about one other thing, Jason.
Yeah.
This is probably the most disappointing thing of all. Thanks to this Black Lives Matter, look at the number of advertisers on television and the radio and internet, wherever. Look how the major industries have totally capitulated. Now, almost every commercial you see has usually some homosexual couple or some black couple. I mean, they have just literally cowed down. And it's very disappointing, because if you know what you and I know, which is, come on, guys, the black homosexual crowd might represent less than 1% of the total population. I mean, it's minuscule, but they're swinging them around like the tail wagging the dog. I mean, it's incredible to see them bend over as they have. But boy, they did in nothing flat. That's why I'm so hooked on Crowdsource the Truth, folks. Without Crowdsource the Truth, none of you would know at all about the importance of the game being played right now, right in front of everybody's nose or in front of their face, about, you know, the whole trick is the confirmation of the Supreme Court justice, because it's not at all what you're led to believe in the mainstream media that it's about.
Yeah.
They wouldn't
Well,
hear
we're going to
that
be
on
watching
any other
this
program.
closely, Larry. I think people are obviously very concerned. I want to make sure that viewers who are with us right now visit nicholslive.com and use Larry's PayPal address, nicholslive@aol.com. You're going to get onto PayPal. Send Larry $5, $10, $25. If you're rich, send him $100. Larry's got a lot of medical bills that he's got to pay, and we've got hundreds of people who are watching right now. Thousands of people will see this video. If you enjoy listening to Larry, let him know. Get on to nicholslive.com/donate or stick $100 in an envelope and mail it to him in Conway, Arkansas. Larry, I really am pleased that we're back in touch and that you're feeling well enough to do the shows. I'm looking forward to next week's show. And you're right, this is urgent. People have got to let their friends know. They can send this video around, friends and family, put it on Twitter, put it on Facebook, wherever you like to go. Anything you want to say in closing, Larry?
Well, yeah, that, folks, it sounds like I'm being patronizing. I'm not. Crowdsource the Truth is the one place that I'm unencumbered, that I can come on and say what I believe I need to say to y'all. It's the one place. Without this, there's nothing. There's nothing out there. We need crowdsource the truth. And yes, today I'm in a nightmare of a situation. So anything urgently somebody can do, please do it. But at the same time, if it comes down ever to me or crowdsource the truth, you've got to go with crowdsource the truth, because without it, you don't have more pain. Without it, you don't have the variety of programming that Jason's able to bring you. Look, we can hold out another 42 days. I swear to God we can. But it's going to be a hard 42 days. It's going to be a hard fought 42 days. But it's about your country. We're about to lose, right out from under us, our country. We're going to lose it for our kids, and we're going to lose it for our grandkids. We need your help. We do.
Appreciate it, Larry.
So,
the
well,
one thing
like
I'll
I
add
say,
is,
Jason,
yeah.
well, I just don't want people to think that I'm being patronizing. I'm not.
No,
If
you're
y'all
not.
have listened to me any length of time, you should know by now. I don't give a damn. You know, I'm going to tell it the way I see it. And by the way, a few people, not many, have commented that they don't necessarily agree with my opinion of President Trump and his handling of this virus. Well, as I was saying earlier, Jason, I've spent the better part of what I got left trying to just inform people. But you know, Jason, when you and I first met, I was very concerned about how people would look at me. And I didn't want your program to be hurt because you had me on. I don't worry about that anymore.
You
I
help
really
it, Larry.
don't. You know,
You're a
I
great
just,
contributor to the show.
Well, you know, folks, I'm just going to tell you, I didn't come here to please you or to please any of you. I didn't come here to try to win your love and support. I came here to tell you those things that I know, that, believe it or not, others know, but they won't tell. Whether they're scared, I don't know. Maybe they're scared to tell it, afraid they'll get whacked. I just can't tell you that. But I do know this. With your help, folks, we can save this country. With your help.
Yeah. Everybody's got to take part, Larry. I really appreciate those kind words. The one thing I'm going to veto, however, if you have to make a choice, send money to Larry. I want Larry to be safe. I want him to get the medical care that he needs. And I hope that people will go to nicholslive.com/donate and send a payment to Larry. If you've never done it before, if you've been watching all these shows, there's so many thousands of people who have. We're going to help Larry now, and we got to help save our country come Election Day. Larry, we'll speak to you next week. I hope everybody will join me tonight at 8 p.m. We got another episode of Larry's second favorite crowdsource, The Truth Show, More Pain, coming tonight. I'll see everybody then. Larry, have a great night.
Thank you. See you all.
Take care, everybody.